All right, let's do this again, but this time for reals. This time with feeling. So thank you all for hopping on in. Thank you all. All right, now for real this time, without the technical difficulties, we'll make it happen. All right. Oh, gotta hit the button. All right, go. Waiting for Chewy. Chew's gonna hop on the show. I don't have a band, so that's my. Hey. God damn it! I can't hear you.
There it goes. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes. What was that?
I don't know. I literally flipped my, like, you know, when you flip your iPhone and you go to the settings.
Yeah.
I went up and went down, and then it somehow magically did it. So some sort of glitch.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
So
yeah, every once in a while, people will try to hop in on live because I'll do it once a week and just let anybody hop in and chit chat. Yeah. And sometimes I can't hear them, so maybe that's what I'll tell them is like just flip your settings up.
Yeah, I just like swiped up and swiped back down, and it somehow fixed it. Crazy.
Yeah, it's the weirdest shit, man. But hey, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to hop in.
Yeah, it's fun, man. We got an hour here before I get rolling with the guys, so I'm excited to be here with you and hang out for a bit.
Yeah, man. I just got back from Nashville, so this is my first day back in like 5 days from
what were you doing in Nashville?
Party. It was a friend's getting married, so we were up there for a bachelor party.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, we had a great time, dude. He wanted to go up there to golf for some reason. So
do you golf much? I'm not a golfer.
No, I didn't even have any clubs to golf with, so I just like rented some, which apparently is the most expensive thing you could possibly do with your life.
Golf's kind of an expensive sport, man. Like I remember, like, you know, like I live by a golf course, and so like when my girlfriend and I go on walks on Sunday, we'll pass by this big golf course. And I was looking at it yesterday, and you know, I grew up kind of as a poor kid, and so I'm walking past it, and I remember thinking, like, you know, that's not a poor kid sport. Like I never had a chance to play any golf at all because it's expensive.
Dude, it's really expensive. And like what killed me was we played on some of the nicer courts, which is why you wanted to go out there. There's like super nice courses out there, and I don't know what I'm doing. Like I just take a little messed up stick and I hit the ball and it goes somewhere. And then like I went through a case of balls like that, and I was like, all right, man, like we basically just day drunk and like play golf. And I gotta tell you, not a bad time. I had a good time for somebody who doesn't golf.
Oh man, I can't do the day drunk thing, man. Like guys will go out and like want to get some drinks or something early, and I'm useless for the rest of the day. But I guess if you're out there just hanging out and vacationing, it might be all right.
Yeah, we literally had nothing else to do. Like I tried while I was out there to hit up like some McDojos. I tried to like scout them out and see where they are, and I had the hardest time finding them. You know, I went to Albuquerque.
Finding a place to train.
Kind of. So what I like to do is when I'm out of town, I'll try to find schools that are illegitimate, I guess you could say. And I try to take a trial class.
But I didn't know what you meant. Okay, cool.
But I got a lot of legitimate schools asked me to train, but I was there for a bachelor party and I didn't want to be disrespectful and show it smelled like alcohol. So,
right.
But I try to find the ones that are like the fakes, the phonies, the frauds, and take their trial class just to see like what it is exactly that's going on in people's heads when they're signing up for these programs. You know, now actually you have a really fucking good program. Now, not only are you somebody who's very interactive with your followers, like your fans, like you're always answering questions, you're always like going live with people and chit chatting and stuff like that. I see your videos on YouTube and Facebook, but like every time I see like videos of you training with your people, you are legitimately give a shit about your students. Like, one of our coaches at our program was somebody who turned me on to your stuff.
Oh, cool.
And which is really cool. Her name's Lori. She's a huge fan. Apparently, she wanted to meet you one time at like a IBJJF, and I guess.
Oh, I know. I remember Lori. Yeah.
Yeah. So, huge fan of yours. But she's one of those people that kind of pushed me in the direction of looking into your stuff.
Cool.
And she told me something that I think is really neat. Is that apparently what you do is you'll wear a black belt with your promotions and everything, and then you'll wear it for X amount of years or time, and then whenever it's time for one of your brown belts to get promoted to your black belt, you hand them that belt.
Yeah, I take mine off. So my thought is like, again, there's this I'm one of these weird, not weird, but I'm one of these people that finds sort of meaning in everything, and so when I promote someone to black belt, to me, there's more than just, okay, you put in X amount of hours or you did this, that, whatever. This is like, I feel like you're a good representation of me and what I stand for and what I'm about, because I would not I'm not going to give you a brown belt if you're a black belt, if you're an awful person, or that I don't trust you, that you can run I mean, it sounds silly, but I mean, like, again, it's such
I think that it's good. Well, because they are an extension of you. Because when someone asks, like, hey, where'd you get your black belt from, your name would pop up. So it's good that you weed through that,
Right. And I mean, as a black belt, regardless of whether or not you want to assume it, like, I mean, you become, for some people, not everyone, but for some people, you become a sort of mentor, because as we know, like, a lot of times our coaches mean more to us than simply just, oh, hey, this is the guy that teaches me jiu-jitsu, right? A lot of times we have this respect and this relationship with them. And I know that for me, man, like, I'll sit on the corner with some of the guys sometimes, and they'll like, man, I'm having trouble with this. It has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. And they ask a question. I'm like, cool, let's go ahead and talk about it for a minute, And so I want to make sure that that happens. And so throughout our training, we've traded blood, sweat, tears. We've been through a lot together, and it's a symbolization of basically from me to you, right? So I basically, whenever I have a belt, there's a couple promotions on my channel where you'll see me as I'm talking to the guy, I'm taking my stripes off of the belt, and then I hand it to them. To me, that's a symbol, just a symbol of basically, for me, I put as much as I can into you, and then, now to you. And for me, like, when I was growing up in jiu-jitsu when I was younger, I remember, like, kind of one of the coolest to me, like, one of the coolest, like, ways to be promoted is when the coach would give us his belt, right? And so for me, like, I always just found it so cool. And so for me, I can't obviously give everyone my original black belt, but I can wear the belt, break it in a little bit, and then I can kind of go through that process for them.
Which is awesome. Now, your original black belt, you still have that, or did you pass that?
I do have that black belt. It's typically the black belt that I will wear right after, like, whenever I actually promote someone. As soon as I take off the newer black belt and give it to the new student, I'll put my original black belt on, and during the promotion. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. Also, you do some things that build what in the business is called the community. You build your community really, really well. So you do things that are a little, I guess you could say, a little bit looser, a little non-traditional. Like, you do this thing that I love, that we are doing at our studio now, because you did it at your studio. But we have this night where we have people just wear whatever. And
the suit roll,
it's probably one of my favorite nights ever is when we do that. Because I was an idiot
so much fun
when we did our first night. And the first night we did it, I was like, oh, I'm going to wear what I wear to sleep. So I had a pair of nighttime pants, a white beater, and I had a robe. Robe is the worst thing you could ever wear to one of these. It's hot. People were like doing the hockey thing to me. They would just throw it over my head.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting strangled. I was like, I'm never wearing that shit to bed again. It taught me something. So where did you get the idea for that?
So that idea came from, and I'm glad you guys took it. I always find that fun. It came about, one of my students was a sort of almost professional semi-pro snowboarder, right? Like, he was really good, right? And so for him, him and his snowboard buddies would go to the thrift stores. They would get on these awful suits, and they would go down to Vegas and stuff, and gamble, and they looked ridiculous, right? They just thought they had fun with it. And so we were talking about that, and we were like, man, we should do I don't know how it happened. It was on a Saturday before Halloween back in 2012. We were like, man, we should do this. We should do something similar. So we went up to a thrift store that day. We all got some suits and stuff, and then we told all the other guys to do it, and we started off just doing a suit rolling. And originally it was just rolling in the suits, and then the next year it turned into this where we just ripped the clothes off, and then it progressively got more and more until I think in 2014 the way that you won, or the way that you would do it, is that you would go until you had more clothing on than anyone else, and so everybody's piling the clothes on and stuff. But it's absolutely ridiculous. But the one thing I will say about it, besides building up kind of a fun sort of thing, is that you really learn how much clothing comes into play. Even as simple as a t-shirt. Because a lot of people make this distinction that the gi is completely unrealistic. It has no bearing, whatever. And again, no one's going to wear a gi necessarily, but if you have a jacket, even if a t-shirt, if I roll up a t-shirt and pull it in there, that's a hell of a handle that I can choke someone with. It's really interesting. And so I remember laughing about it, but then kind of having these where all of us kind of had the same realization, man, we really were able to manipulate all this cloth and fabric. So pretty much, unless the person's completely naked, you can use fabric, you know what I mean, to manipulate the situation for the fight.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting that in Jujitsu, you know, you have your gi, you know, you're able to manipulate the pants, you're able to manipulate the gi top, the sleeves, and, you know,
Yeah,
hell, even in no gi, you know, when you're moving around, some material feels different than no material. You know, rolling with
sure.
a dude who's got no shirt as opposed to a rash guard feels
Yes,
completely different, and it gives you
absolutely.
a different. I guess you could say it makes you have to sink your technique in a little deeper if somebody's a little slipperier. You know, like
Yeah,
how I've always thought about it is like in gi jujitsu, it's a lot in my head anyway. I could be completely wrong. It's just my opinion. But in gi jujitsu, I feel like it makes you have to work on being very good at defending things because everything
hmm,
sticks to you a little bit. You know, when somebody's gi pants hit your gi top, you know it's on there. You know, it kind of
yeah,
sinks in and seals in a little bit. But in you know, no gi jujitsu, it makes you have to be very good at attacking things because people are so damn
sure,
slippery. So if you're
right.
gonna be good at, you know, no gi jujitsu, your attacks need to be on, like dead on.
Hmm,
Whereas in gi, there's little room for error, you know, because at least the fabric helps out a little bit, you know. But
sure.
I always thought it was interesting that in gi jujitsu, they don't allow you to attack with the belt. You can grab the belt, but it's not like I can take it off and hog tie you or
Wrap you around.
strangle
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
But in that exercise where you can wear whatever you want,
Yeah.
I'm gonna choke you with whatever I can.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so it's very interesting to see the dynamic that gi does play because it's anybody that says it's unrealistic must be fighting a lot of naked people, which is weird. You know.
Well, and I mean, I know what it is. It's just a situation where people, you know, unfortunately, it's a lot of times where, again, I'll agree that some techniques that are done in gi are unrealistic to a fight situation, but so are some of the techniques that we use in no gi, right? I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the jujitsu when we play sport, like jujitsu versus jujitsu, we're not going to use in a fight necessarily. But I think a lot of times people sort of just buy into other people's dogmatic beliefs, right? Because people say like people have separated themselves within a market saying, okay, well, we don't do this because it's this, right? And then because I'll have people that have never trained in the gi and they'll tell me that it's unrealistic. I'm like, well, how do you know? Like, have you ever done it? Like, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to agree with me, but don't you think that you should at least give it a fair shake before you write it off? You know what I mean? Because you should, you know, try it out. Just like people that are in the gi who like will, you know, say, I'm not doing the no gi, the set, whatever. And I'm like, well, shouldn't you do it just to give it a try to see what's there? Because maybe you end up liking it, you know?
Mm.
And I've had brand new students come into me and they tell me straight up, I'm not wearing the gi. I'm not going to do it. I'm like, that's fine, man. You don't have to. And then, you know, one day they'll come and try the gi out and they'll be like, oh, this is kind of fun, right? Like, this
Mm.
is kind of cool. But they got into it where they had been listening to podcasts and stuff and they bought into someone else's belief. And so I feel like a lot of times that's what it is, where people just, they buy someone else's belief and then they got to like carry that torch and like spread it out, even though it's not necessarily something that they've really gotten into.
Yeah, I think that's a shame too. I think it's a very closed-minded way of looking at bettering yourself. You know, like I really do think that you should just try if you're doing the martial arts right before. Because I've been doing this for a long time. Been doing this for about 21 years. I've had an opportunity.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate that my first instructor was very open-minded.
Yeah.
Because who knows, if he was closed-minded, I might have followed that belief system. But I was
Sure.
very fortunate to have an instructor who cared to say, "Hey, man, try it all. Figure it out for yourself." And back in the day when I started in karate, but back then everybody who was doing karate was like, oh, don't do jujitsu, that's a bunch of gay dudes rolling around the mat, right? Well then
Right.
back then UFCs, you can only find them on pay-per-views if you knew when they were going to happen, or you can only find them on VHSs in the back section of movie stores, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all of a sudden a couple of friends of mine, we got UFC like 1 through 5, and we watched them all, and one thing we noticed was like, dude, jujitsu was like blowing people out of the water. I was like, there's a
Yeah.
little bit more to this than man-on-man action. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that he's legitimately beating these people, and we didn't know what was happening. Like most karate guys back in the day, we didn't know. We were like, what the hell is he
Yeah.
doing? And
Oh,
then
dude,
all of
I
a
did
sudden he started,
Taekwondo and I said the same thing.
yeah, you know, and it's funny because that opened my mind to want to learn jiu-jitsu at that moment. You know, so whenever people ask me like, who's one of your favorite fighters, Hoist has got to be one of them, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even show an interest in jiu-jitsu, because I would have just followed that, oh man, jiu-jitsu's kind of gay kind of thing.
Yeah.
But man, like once I did it and really learned jiu-jitsu, not just like a grappling class or somebody who had never done jiu-jitsu, but really took a jiu-jitsu class, it blew my mind how effective
Yeah.
it was. Because you can get lucky and knock someone out. You can just get lucky. You can ball up your fist, throw a fist at somebody, and knock them unconscious, right? You don't have to have any
Does
skill.
happen.
But man, you can't get a lucky submission. It's not like, whoa, armbar, I made it happen. Yay.
Yeah. It definitely shows itself because, I mean, you know, when you get into a situation, we used to talk about this when I first started, you know, I mean, even like when you box someone, right? Like, granted, you can control a lot of variables in boxing. Like, I can take a brand new guy and I can box with him, and it's very hard for him to hit me, you know, flush or anything. But he can probably still, you know, land something, you know, like on my arm or my body or something like that. But when you're in a grappling situation and you control someone and you basically dominate position, they're seemingly just helpless because they don't understand the rules or anything, and so there is no chance of them just grabbing an armbar. Like, I mean, it just doesn't work. Like, the guy might be able to club me over top of the head hard, but there's no chance that they're going to be able to work out of the situation and just somehow get me in an armbar. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, most likely they put themselves in something being dumb. Like,
absolutely.
They don't know.
Absolutely.
You know, the first thing I had to learn about jiu-jitsu was arm in, arm out was bad.
Yeah.
Because I just throw myself into triangle chokes all day. Like, I'm just going to reach forward now. Oh, armbar. Damn it. Took me a while to figure that out because I'm slow. But I learned.
Yeah, and I came from a wrestling background because I originally did Taekwondo back in the day, and I went to this little community center doing it, and I got I think it was my yellow belt. It was my second belt, right? I did my little like forms and stuff like that. Got my belt. And then I talked to the coach. I was like, hey, or sensei or whatever. I said, when do I get to spar? Like, that's what I wanted to do, right? Because the whole reason I got into Taekwondo is because I watched Bloodsport. So I was I want to go fight in the Kumite someday. And so, you know, this 8-year-old, I guess I was, he goes, man, you don't get to spar till you're a blue belt. And I don't know what blue belt was, how many belts it was down the road. But I as short-sighted as I was as a kid, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to spar. I want to fight. And so, you know, eventually I got into wrestling. This is, you know, in high school and stuff like that. And then when I got into jiu-jitsu following that to start fighting in MMA, I had some trouble with putting my legs in certain positions. In wrestling, you do something where you split the legs to help basically flatten the person out so you can pin them. And I remember I had trouble. I would just do it instinctively. And, you know, where you were, like, again, having your own trouble with arm in, arm out, I had my trouble hooking the legs when I would get to the turtle position. The person would roll through for a knee bar, like, every single time.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about belief system earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I want to circle back to that. So, now what the goal of my page is to try to expose people to things that are bad and expose people to things that are good.
Sure.
Because I can't just tear down things. It doesn't make any sense at all. You know, like, because then there'd be nothing left. Because I want the good things in the martial arts to be boosted up. People who are legitimate, people who are open and honest, who really give a shit about the people that they train with. Now, I think you're a great example of that. You know, I genuinely, it shows that you care about your students. That is a beautiful thing. You're an open guy. You seem to be very honest. But I think that a lot of people probably come to you for different reasons, like any other martial art, right? There might be people there who are looking for a mentor, people who might want to lose weight, people who are looking for self-defense, all the reasons your usual suspects are joining the martial arts. Let's say, for instance, you met someone who was disingenuous, or met somebody who was a shyster, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think the difference is between an honest person teaching martial arts and people who kind of fall for shysters? Because I think there's a similar dynamic there. Because when people come to you for martial arts, right, they're coming to you because they trust you. Like, they might not know you right at first, but they stay with you because they trust you. They like the atmosphere, right?
Right.
Now, what about the people who go to somewhere that's maybe a little shady, or maybe the instructor lied, or maybe they're teaching them things that just are made up? Why do you think people stay with them as opposed to stay with someone who's genuine?
Okay. I was thinking of the question. So, and real quick, before I get into, you know, why someone would stay with them, just something to think. I would say to people, you know, with all the martial arts, a lot of times, and I know, and since you're like a martial arts sort of, you know, journeyman, you experience all these different martial arts, then you understand that sometimes there's some components to the martial arts that even if, like, because jiu-jitsu guys are really bad about sometimes just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? They think karate's stupid, so you shouldn't do karate. But there's some, like, really legit forms of karate. Like, it's no joke, right? I have a friend, him and his father grew up doing, like, I guess it's form, I don't know how to say it correctly, you probably do, Kyokushin?
Yeah, Kyokushin.
Yeah, Kyokushin. So they did a form of it, Byakuren. And, I mean, they would beat the hell out of each other. And I remember, like, you know, sparring with these guys, and it's like they could throw down. And so it was the methodology of other training. So it's one of those things where it's important not to simply just say blanket all martial arts that aren't jiu-jitsu or something like that. They have value to them. You just have to find good instructors, things like that.
Now, have you ever heard of the 5 rules that we have here?
I have not, no.
So we have 5 standards for a McDojo, right?
Okay.
And they're very important to what we do because I love martial arts, almost all of them, unless they fall into the 5 rules. So number 1 is don't lie about your rank or your fight record. If you lie about your rank or your fight record, you're probably going to lie about everything else. So that's number 1. Number 2, don't teach no-touch knockouts or techniques that have not been proven in some way. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like acrobatic kicking or kung fu, because if it wasn't for kung fu, you wouldn't have sweet kung fu movies. If it wasn't for acrobatic kicking, you probably wouldn't have stuntmen. So, and not everything has to be just combat to me. That's me anyway. So, but don't teach things that aren't legitimate, you know, like if I teach a 540 kick, could I actually 540 kick somebody in the head? Sure I could. Raymond Daniels has done it before. He's pulled off a 720 in the ring. But at least Raymond Daniels didn't go, hey, this is a thing, and then just jump up and do a seizure and go, I made that up just now. So that's rule number 2 is don't teach no-touch knockouts or techniques that you would say are combat proven that aren't. Number 3, don't be a child molester. There are plenty of people out there who have molested children who open martial arts studios. It's ridiculous. Like, there's a thing on YouTube where it's like an hour-long video of just constant news reports of martial artists getting arrested for molesting children.
That's awful.
Exactly. It's jacked up. And there are actually people who still do it. Like, it's crazy to me, but I don't think they should have a seat at the table. 4, cult-like activity or unsafe training practices. So, like, there are these people who, you know, who are, like, on concrete, sparring with shoes outside. Like, you're a moron. Like, what happens if you hit somebody, knock them out, and they hit the back of their head on the concrete? That's unsafe. Or you see these videos of guys just standing there letting the guy tee off on their head. Like, that's stupid. That's called a concussion dummy. You know, or the cult-like thing where you have these people who are willing to do absolutely anything for you, like, in a way that you're taking advantage of your student. Like, I've seen people who were, like, show up to people's door and, like, knock on their door, which goes to the next one, which is shady business practices, which is the last one. Which, like, if I knock on your door asking for tuition at your house, that's not a business. That's a shakedown. So those are my 5 rules. As long as things don't fall in those 5, I'm cool with it. You know, like, I think that those are just good standards for every art, no matter what the art is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, why do people, that was your question, like, why do people go to, like, when they get to a shyster, because a lot of times they go to someone that's shysty or some sort of illegitimate martial arts school, a lot of times just because they don't have the education to know otherwise, right? So they get sucked into it. Maybe it's a jiu-jitsu gym that they thought was legitimate. Maybe it's some other martial art that's really out there that they just think looks cool, so they get into that. Why do they stay? I have a few thoughts. Again, I can't necessarily back these up with any sort of scientific evidence, but just from my anecdotal evidence, being around people and things like that, I think we'll talk about jiu-jitsu schools first. So, like, I've seen illegitimate jiu-jitsu schools pop up. There was one, for instance, here in my town years ago when I was a brown belt. There was a guy that was parading around as a black belt, teaching people how to fight. And in one situation, he actually got a guy injured where this guy fought one of our guys at an MMA fight, and the guy got beat up so badly because he was so ill prepared for the fight that he had to get plates put in his face because his orbital was broken. It's very bad. I mean, I can't, you know what I mean? It's terrible, isn't it? Right? But it's like, it's one of those things where it's a legitimate issue. And so there was a thing going on where he had a radio commercial talking about doing jiu-jitsu, and this guy's unranked in jiu-jitsu. I had rolled with him before. He was just awful, and he didn't even look the part. He wasn't in good shape. I don't know how he pulled the wool over all these guys' eyes. And I called him out in a few different places because I'm like, dude, you're lying. I was like, you're not a black belt, you're not this, that, whatever. And he eventually took down that stuff. Eventually his gym closed down, which he was running out of like a fitness gym anyway. And some of his students started training with us. And what I sort of saw was that these guys got into it because they had these goals, and this guy said, hey, I can give you what you're looking for. So they come in, and, they started to kind of question, like, what's going on, because obviously it didn't take long because some of these guys were pretty good athletes, training with this sort of overweight guy that wasn't skilled, and it didn't take long for them to kind of start to question what was going on, right? But the thing is they had friends there now. Like, so they had built a team, and these guys were really nice. They really enjoyed being there. And at the same time, like, this was your first experience, right? It's like, it's like if you got into a relationship with a really awful girlfriend, you don't know any different because it was your first girlfriend. So you just kind of go with it because you're like, I guess this is okay, right? And then
how did
once
you
they
know
got
about my
exposed,
first girlfriend?
Oh, I know, right? Everyone's first girlfriend, probably. Or boyfriend. But this was kind of the situation that ran into it. It's like he got into the situation, or these guys got into these situations where they didn't know any different. And then once they got exposed to something else, they started to kind of go, maybe I need to rethink what I'm doing. And then you do get into situations where, and that's what I would say from the jiu-jitsu standpoint, what I've seen in MMA standpoint. But you also get the situation where people will believe whatever people want to believe. It's as simple as that, right? I mean, it just doesn't matter. I mean, like, if someone gets pulled into it, one, maybe you have a person that's using manipulative, tactics to psychologically control people in some way, right? Which is a possibility. But sometimes people get so into something that they believe. This is why you have people that when they do the no-touch knockout, like, they have physiological things popping up in their body because the mind's a powerful thing, man. The mind and the body are connected.
That's actually interesting that you brought that up, because that was one thing that people that a couple news reports have done is they've gone to these no-touch knockout places. There's a famous one with one of George Dillman's students. And I think there was some famous fighter who was
Stephen Bonner.
Yeah,
Stephen Bonner was there, because they went to the old Carlson gym.
Yeah, they hooked him up to machines just to figure out, like, yo, what's going on with their body. And they said that there was actually things that were going on physically with them, like, because their heart rate would elevate and they couldn't figure out exactly what it was. But you're right, like, but that goes to show you the level of crazy, because if you're willing to put all of your belief in that. But the one thing what bothers me the most about it is with, like, a George Dillman or someone like that, a famous shyster, is they're willing to put all of this out there and even go on TV to defend it. But they're not willing to show it, if that makes any sense. Like, overseas right now, there's a guy, I think it's either in China or Japan, I think China, and this guy is challenging these masters to MMA fights, these no-touch guys, and they're accepting. But that goes to show you that if they didn't really drink their own Kool-Aid, they wouldn't accept the fight. They would hide behind some belief system like, oh, it's too deadly, I would kill you, or, oh, this is for the streets, the same old story. Right. But they don't. They accept. And they're willing to to throw down over it, and he just knocks them unconscious.
I saw the one in China, the guy that was doing Tai Chi, and for me, like, I do a little Tai Chi, so it's like, it's a good form of, like, meditation and movement and stuff like that. So I like it for that reason, right? Just to sort of, like, it really is. It can kind of calm your brain down a little bit. But I'm not gonna do it to think that I'm gonna somehow like throw chi blasts at someone and they're gonna knock them out, right? Like, I mean, we can be a little bit more realistic than that.
Yeah. There's a style out there. It's called ChewJitsu. Okay. And this is George Dillman's style that he made. He made it, but there's a lot of other sects of that, like sect. Sorry, I have a speech impediment, so it's very hard to say that word. There's a lot of other sects. But there's a lot of levels to that. Like, students under him have made their own styles, and students under them have made their own styles, which blows my mind, because you figured after the one guy made his own shit, they would just be like, yo, I'm under this guy now, and I'm going to do what he does, right? And they ride that coattail. But they don't. They're like, you know what? I think I can do this a little bit better. Like, you can knock people out with your mind better. Like, there's a better way.
Maybe, maybe his, like, giant ego sort of rubs off on him, and then when they get out there, then they're like, oh, I need my own style now, right? And I'll tell you one thing that I never, like, this is just as a kid, right? Like, when I used to watch, because I remember seeing George Dillman and some of these guys on, like, Ripley's Believe It or Not back in the day, and I remember looking at him, and for me, like, I'm not saying that you've got to be, like, ripped and shredded, right? But to me, part of being a martial artist, right, is that you have to, especially if you're going to be a coach or a leader of that thing, you got to lead by example. And so to me, it's like, you got to kind of look the part, man. Like, are you living a healthy lifestyle? Or are you living a lifestyle that basically is where we're all imperfect human beings, but I feel like a certain duty myself to try to be as best as I can possibly be, both on and off the mat, because I know that there's young kids in the gym that are going to follow me. I know that I have young guys that are looking up to me. So like, to me, there's a certain duty on it. So I need to be in the best shape I can be. I need to be making myself better. And so even as a kid, I used to look at these like martial artists that were out of shape. They're fat. They had these big bellies. Like I went to a karate school one time, and this was before I did Taekwondo. And I remember going in there, and there was this overweight karate guy. His belt barely fit, and he's like, you could tell he like smoked all his life. How you doing, guys? Good to have you guys here. And for me, I'm like, you're a martial artist. Like you're the one that's gonna like make me better. Like you can't even make yourself better. How are you gonna make me better? And so for me, like I think that when you look at these guys, like all these no touch knockout guys, like man, like some of them they look like they just stepped out of McDonald's to come over there and start teaching. I'm like, you're not living a martial artist lifestyle,
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing to me is I think that once you take the role of instructor or coach or leader, no matter what it is, it could be basketball, football, hockey, it could be literally anything. But once you take the role of an authority figure in someone else's life, I think that you have a duty to try to live as close to what you're trying to teach these people as possible. Sure. And you can be doing anything, but the moment that you start stepping away from, do what I say, not do what I do, I think that you start fucking up your students. Like, because they're not going to always just pay attention to what you say. They're watching you all the time.
Actions speaks so loudly, your actions will drown out anything that you say, and I think we've all had this experience. I know I've had it where, I would see guys that I thought they for me were like heroes, right? When I was younger. And then maybe I had the opportunity to meet someone like that. And sometimes you're kind of let down. You're like, oh, that you're not who you paraded to be, right? And
Dude. Real fast with that, right? Sorry, I apologize. But
no, go ahead, man. I mean, it's
we
fine.
only have like an hour, so I wanted to get a good story in at least, right? So have you ever met somebody that was like a hero to you, right? And they turned out to be better than you thought or worse than you thought? Have you ever had a moment like that?
Oh, man. I've had a few when I was younger. Nobody in particular that I can just name off like right at the top of my head. But I remember, growing up, you see these different people. And it's our own fault. Just when we're younger, we look up to people and we kind of idolize them to some degree, right? And we project our own sort of biases on them. It's our fault for doing it, right? It's not their fault. They're just human. But you would see like different people. Here's a great example. I remember like growing up as a kid. This is like super far distant, but this is just an example. And I'll see if I can get someone that are a little bit more closely, impacted. But like Jean-Claude Van Damme, I had the huge man crush on him when I was a kid. I thought he was the coolest, right?
Yeah.
And then you find out that he's like fucked up on drugs and going on through all this stuff. And you're like, well, wait a second. He was the guy that was supposed to be like the martial arts guy. He was a movie star. Like that was my own projection on him, right? There were guys that like, when I was younger, growing up, like coaches and things like this when I was in school. And I just looked up to these guys and I thought they had all their shit together. And I thought they were like great guys. And then I would find out that they were like, cheating on their wife and doing all kinds of nasty stuff. And it was kind of like, and again, I know that people do these things and we're all fucked up. We're no one's perfect. But, it's just one of those things where, I don't know. For me, like I talked to my girlfriend about this. I'm like, I'm not perfect by no stretch. But I would hate, like when I do things, I would hate for like one of my kids' students, right? Some kid that maybe looks up to me or some kid that watches a video. I would hate for them to see me doing this thing and then be like, oh man, Chewy sucks. Right? I mean, like Chewy's a complete faker. You know what I mean? And so again, it's my own pressure on myself, but I would like to at least try to, again, my own sort of compass, try to live a life that's, where I don't have to like hide behind all this stuff and have to be, faking this thing. I'd rather just be who I am and try to be as good a person as I can. But I have had those situations where I met people and I was let down by who I thought they were. Again, that's my fault. And then I meet them and then they're not who I thought they were at all, or who they paraded around to be.
Yeah, we definitely put people on pedestals. But one thing I've noticed is it seems like the most impactful people in the world were giant pieces of shit. Like, just saying, like, If you look at somebody like let's go Ray Charles, heroin addict, womanizer. Let's go with Michael Jackson. You know, may or may not have slept with children. I think so, but that's just me.
Right.
Or you look at all of these great people have done great things, but I think that it's almost like if you're going to do one thing above and beyond exceptional, that it's going to take away from something else that you're doing in your life. You know, whether it be like, okay, well, I'm going to put all my effort and all my energy into this one thing, and I'm going to be the best at this. Well, what about all these other things? You know, it's almost like I don't know if you've ever played D&D, but I'm a giant nerd.
Yeah.
So if you ever played D&D, right, like your statistics, like strength and dexterity and all that, you can't have all that maxed out, right? If one's good, then the other might suffer. Well, it's like that when it comes to people in their life.
I mean, this is just the duality of nature, right? Whenever you give to something else, you have to take from something else. And I mean, you know, even guys that maybe weren't quite as, you know, terrible as some of those, like, I mean, even guys like, you know, Winston Churchill, for example, that guy, like this guy that like sort of held, you know, the UK together during this time. He was incredibly depressed all the time. When I read his biography, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a mess, right? He was an alcoholic. He was depressed all the time. You know, Martin Luther King, he experienced huge bouts of depression, and there might have been some stuff going on in his background as well. Like a lot of these influential people, everybody's fucked up. You know what I mean? It's the way it is. I'm not saying that. It's just one of those things where you just try to at least live as best you can. I mean, like I said, we all, every one of us, included everybody watching this, has something in their closet that they would never want to see the light of day. Right? Like something that they've done, said, or been, or whatever it is, they would never want someone to see. We all have those sides to ourselves. And that's why it's important, one, to, you know, like I said, not put people on these giant pedestals all the time. But, you know, again, you try to live the best life you can. Anyway, I'm sort of rambling there at that point. So.
No, but I agree. Like, I think the funny part is like, well, somebody's on the feed said like 75% of NFL players are just giant pieces of garbage, right? I'm paraphrasing, but I think that we only put people on pedestals, it seems, that are in very specific positions. And like, for instance, if I go to my mechanic, right, I'm not going to be like, hey, dude, hook up my car real fast. All right, cool. Oh, by the way, I'm having a little bit of an existential crisis. Could you help me out with something? Like, no, you know, because he's your mechanic. You trust him to do the one job, right? But it seems like when it comes to like martial arts instructors and things like that, that we ourselves, like you said, it's your own fault if they let you down. We ourselves put them up on pedestals. They didn't necessarily ask to be there, but, you know, by taking that role of instructor, it seems like all of a sudden now you're a psychiatrist. Now you're someone else's go-to guy for advice. You're someone else's go-to guy to learn about boxing. Even though you've never boxed in your life, you, for some reason, because you teach jiu-jitsu, now they think that you can do absolutely everything. You know, it's a very interesting dynamic that martial artist instructors have, that it's almost like people put them up on such a high pedestal because of the job. You know, do you feel like people put you up on a pedestal like that?
Do people put me on a pedestal?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. You know, I think that's, I don't know. I mean, because I've never really heard anybody, like, you know, the one thing that I ask people sometimes when they meet me for the first time, I'm like, am I what you expected? Because, like, you know, when people meet me, they have this, it's kind of a weird thing, because, like, when I go to tournaments in jiu-jitsu, right, I didn't really realize the amount of people that watch it, or the impact of the videos, until I started going to these tournaments where, like, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, like, 100 of people would come over, and like over throughout the day would come up and talk to me. Some of these guys and women, like, they didn't exchange a handshake. They came up and they, like, with a big extended arm, they like hugged me, you know, and which is cool, because I mean, obviously, if I'm spreading out something positive and it means that much to them, I'm glad it did. Whether or not they put me on a pedestal, I don't know. But I asked them, like, am I what you expected? I'm just curious, right? And they're like, no, you're exactly. Or when people come to the gym, they'll train with me, they'll get to meet me, and I'm like, you know, and they'll say, like, dude, you're exactly what I was expecting you to be. And that's good for me, because, again, if I do the videos, I'm trying to be as genuine as I am as possible. Like, I'm just that guy that you see rambling on about stuff. That's me, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping it's coming across that way. But, you know, kind of going back to what you were saying about why do they come to certain people to do these things? I think it's because when you put your trust in someone, even if this person is not the authority on these subjects, you have trust in them, right? It's like your friends, right? You'll probably trust a friend's opinion about a food, right? Let's say a restaurant. Your buddy, your best friend comes up to you and says, man, that steak, this place makes the best steak. You've got to get it if you like steak. and then you read a person who's like this really renowned, world-renowned, whatever, steak critic, and he says that their steak sucks. You'll trust your friend's opinion over that guy because you don't know him, you don't trust him, right? Even though he's not as qualified, this guy you trust, this guy you don't. And a lot of times we don't want like it's like a dad, right? You don't want multiple dads. You want one, right? You know, so you go to one guy. You know, you're like, this is the guy that I trust the most. And again, hopefully they at least know somewhat what they're talking about, you know, or they can at least be helpful.
Yeah, I think that this particular thing that I started here is really odd.
I like it.
When I started it, it didn't exist. Like there was Bullshido. Bullshido's been out for a long time, right? But Bullshido has done like a lot of politics, and pretty much they try to debunk absolutely everything. I've always just kind of stuck to this because this is what I know, and I'm pretty sure people are tired of hearing about politics. I try to stay away from all of that. But when I started this, people tend to ask me a lot of questions about shit I don't know the answer to. So I just simply tell them, I don't know. You know, one thing I did try to do, you were talking about like you're trying to portray yourself as who you are, which is great. I love that. That's another reason I wanted you on here is because I think a lot of people could take it from that example and learn and grow from that. But I always I knew that when I started this, I was always going to cuss. I cuss in real life. I was going to cuss on here. I didn't want anybody to be, oh my God, he cusses. Oh, so I started off that way. You know, I talk about my personal life on here. Some of it's raunchy, but it is what it is. It's always amazing to me that people always tend to think like, oh, well, like, who are you to say that something is bad? Well, it's like, just because I'm not the best in the world, because I don't believe there ever is a best at anything. I only think there's better, and I'm always at any given Sunday kind of day. I have days where I go into the studio and I get tapped out all the time. Then I have days where I didn't get submitted, or I got submitted, but I learned a shit ton of stuff. And I was like, dude, that was the best day. Which are my favorite days. It's just me getting crushed and driving home for an hour going, what did I do wrong with my life? And then figuring it out going, you know what? That's what I need to do. But it's always amazing to me how people I don't know, I've never met in my life, come to me and ask a lot of questions and treat it like I am the expert on everything martial arts. And I'm really not. I am mediocre. I'm not the best in the world. But it's very an odd dynamic that people you don't know trust you so much, you know?
I think, you're talking about like when people want to project, right? Where they're saying, who are you to talk about these things, right? Who are you? And to me, when people do that, I often sort of think about that person. I think a lot of people project like either hatred or like nastiness, negative vibes, or we'll say negativity towards others. A lot of times when it's something that they have sort of put like tucked under, the shelf, so to speak. So basically, if maybe this is a person that would love to speak about something like this, but they don't because they don't feel like they're qualified or because they don't feel like they can, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of people like that. They'll say, who are you? It's like, well, who are any of us, right? Like, you're just, I'm sharing this opinion from 21 years of experience, right? But I think that a lot of people want to project that because there's a side in them that wants to go out and maybe do something like that, but then they don't. And then so instead of doing it, they just go point at everybody else that's doing it, and then they bark at them. So I mean that again, to me, it kind of goes back to them. If you're projecting that negativity on someone else, it goes back to you, right? Just like we were talking about, if you put someone up on a pedestal, that's your own doing. And if you're projecting negativity on others, that's coming from somewhere in you. That's not that person necessarily. That's somewhere in you, most likely.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I like to ask this question. I've asked it of everybody I've interviewed so far. It's one of my favorites. So I talked to Mr. Jiu-Jitsu. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. He's come to the gym and trained before. He's nice. He's a fun dude.
Dude, that guy goes to everybody's gym, which is what I love about him. He's one of those guys that, like, no excuses, get out there, train. I love him,
Yeah.
But he had a hilarious story. He had a great story about him going to train, do a private lesson at someone's house. And when he went to go do a private lesson at their house, he said the dude had candles lit, and it was really weird. So left, right? It's really funny. I'm not going to say the story here, but have you ever had like an odd experience like that? Like it could be absolutely anything in your training that just sticks out to you as, man, that shit was funny or odd.
Man, dude, we joke around, and we were like, we need to write a book, right? Like at this gym, because we've been here for over 10 years, and I mean the stories that we have, bro, like it's absolutely ridiculous. All the stories. I'll give you one about the private, and maybe I can throw another one in there. But the private one, I had a woman one time that wanted to do a private lesson. And then when we were doing the private lesson, I was just, because she wanted to kind of get warmed up to jiu-jitsu. I'm a young guy at this time. I'm like 25 or something. And so I'm taking her through this private lesson, showing her how to do some basic upa escapes, mount escapes, things like that, showing her the basic positions. And at the end of it, she was like, well, can you, and to kind of set the stage, she was newly divorced. And she was a very like put together woman, right? So at the end of this private lesson, I'm like, do you have any questions? And she's like, sure, can you show me how to get out of some of these positions? And I'm like, sure, we can take a look at them. And she put us into some compromising positions where, like, you know, maybe it resembled something you might do in the bedroom. And then she said, well, how would I get out of this? And I, you know, remember being kind of like, there was just some odd sort of vibe going. Well, later on, she was like, hey, I don't know what you're doing tonight, but if you'd like to do another private lesson, I have a pool and you can come over to my house and everything else like this. And I was like, oh, man. And then, you know, we had one guy, just random story. We're in a strip mall, and there used to be a bar down at the end of the strip mall.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Oh man, we would get the craziest people coming in. You know, like there would be sometimes where they would have this all male review, like the stripper type things. And so we would like all take off our shirts and like train and like lock the doors so they couldn't get in. But there was a guy that came in one time. He sits down, and as he walked in, I was rolling, and my buddy was working the front desk. I could just smell the alcohol. And he sits down at the table and looks at my buddy. I'm kind of watching him out of the side of my eye while I'm rolling this white belt. And he goes, man, you guys train? And my buddy kind of looks at him while there's a class going on. It's going to train. And he said, well, looks around, I'm going to learn how to beat a motherfucker to death. Right? And that's what he says.
That's very specific.
Very specific. I want to learn how to beat a motherfucker to death. So my buddy Derek, he's ridiculous. He didn't even skip a beat. He like takes out one of our schedules and he starts highlighting classes. And he says, well, our beat a motherfucker to death classes are right here. And he starts outlining them on the list. And he says it'll only be, you know, $1,500 up front and then $300 a month after that. Now, obviously, that's not our prices, but, you know, we don't want the guy to actually train there. But, you know, we've had stories like that for years. You know, I mean, like it's just the silly stuff coming in here sometimes.
Yeah, you know, it's I wanted to circle back to that story that you said. It's a little more serious, but it kind of brings up a point. You know, obviously, I don't know. I'm assuming you didn't go to this lady's house for private lessons later, but
no, I thought it would have been bad form just for the simple fact that I didn't want to get into a situation that wouldn't have been too good for the gym. So yeah, I kind of had to. Like, unfortunately, I had to pass on that one. She was a very attractive woman. She was a very attractive woman, but it was just like, better not do that.
Well, yeah, that's one of those things that's it's frowned upon. You know, it's not going to make you look good in the end because as a student, you know, you're an instructor. It just doesn't look good. Although
I guess so. I mean, she was a woman. She was a consenting adult. There was no like, for me, she had approached me about it. If I had taken the advantage, like, and said, okay, cool, like, she wants to hang out, let's hang out. But, you know, there was no, like, predatory nature to it. It was like I was doing a lesson to show her something, and then she was kind of interested, you know, because she just got out of divorce, and she's like, this young guy or whatever. But I didn't want to take that one up because, you know, the big reason was with this particular woman, she had a kid that trained here at the gym. And so I didn't want to go over to that house and be like, oh, yeah, hey, look, me and your mom, I'm going to take her in the back and have a private lesson with her. I was like, you know, that'd be so skeezy. And I would, you know, I would hate to look in the mirror at myself and have that in the back of my mind.
Now, I have a little bit of a story about that. So there was our instructor's original mentor, his original instructor. He came over from Brazil with his wife, and they started a studio from zero. Like literally, They knew nothing about marketing, nothing about advertisement, didn't speak any English. They came over, they were just like, we're starting. And the dude opened a studio from scratch, and he wound up being fairly successful. I mean, he's a very intelligent man, but the biggest douchebag I've ever met in my life. He is just a complete asshole. Like, I have never met somebody as much of an ass, and I've met some giant assholes, but he's the king. But anytime that he would come over to our studio, at the end of it, he would always rip into a class. That was like a thing that he would do. He'd have this Brazilian thing. Oh, no one say hello to me when I walk in door. You do not deserve to be student here. And he'd just rip them apart for like 5 to 10 minutes straight at the end of a class. And then we would have, every time he would do this, we'd have like 5 or 6 students never come back. They would call us the next day and be like, we're canceling. We're never coming back. Yeah. And we're like, yo, like, he's just visiting. We're sorry. Like, but that's our instructor's instructor. And then one day he came over to the studio during like an in-house tournament that we had. So he was visiting from California and he came over. Yeah. And he came over, he's married. He came over with this 20-year-old who was his secretary. And like he's sitting at a table, like one of the scoring tables, judging score tables. He's sitting at a table and she's like rubbing on his shoulders and touching his head and shit, like very suggestive stuff during the tournament in the middle of everything. Yeah. Everybody knows this dude's married. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. But he winds up like leaving his wife, this chick who was with him from the start, like came from Brazil with nothing, helped build an empire for him. And then he just leaves for the secretary. But like, that's the kind of shit that just gets under my skin a little bit when it comes to like, you know, that guy, I feel, took advantage of the position that he was in financially and as an instructor. You know, he had this girl working with him. She was young, and he like just, you know, just fucks over his wife like that. To me, you know, like, I'm not a great person. I've made plenty of mistakes. I'm definitely a giant piece of shit. I'm not gonna lie about that. But
everyone is, myself included.
You know, but at the same time, like, I just think that was one of those times where you look at this and you're going, you're not even trying to hide this. You're not even trying to like be respectful enough of your studio to have your own personal private time to be disrespectful. You know, like, I just think that there's a dynamic when you walk inside the studio that's different than when you walk out of the studio. To me, that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That story. See, you know, I've seen this kind of stuff before. I've gone to gyms. Our gym's very relaxed, right? Because again, I see myself as I'm there to help my guys, you know. And again, I'm not there to stand over. If you walk in the gym, you'll see my students giving me shit. We'll be like, you know, talking shit back and forth, you know, as friends, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way that I typically want to come across. I want to come across like, if anything, maybe like you know, because some of these guys in the are older than me, obviously, but like coming from a place of like an older brother, right? Like I'm teaching them some stuff that I've seen, and hopefully it's helpful to you. Maybe, hopefully that's the way that I come across, rather than like, you know, the all-knowing person. And I really hate that idea, because I've seen that happen before, where like, you know, you're supposed to come in and kowtow to the person. Like, you're just another man, bro, like just like the rest of us. And obviously respect should be, you know, it should be given, but it should also be reciprocated, right? Because I feel like the relationship between instructor and student should be reciprocal. I give you respect and loyalty to you to make you better, and in turn you pay gym dues and you give respect to me, and we just kind of do this dance back and forth, right? And when I stop, you can stop. When you stop, I can stop, and because the circle's been broken. Yeah. And I feel like when I've gone to certain gyms where I went to one, man, it was strange. There was this white belt, and this was like right when I started to kind of like get some notoriety. There was this white belt sitting over there, and he kept doing this thing where he'd look up and look back down, look up, look back down, and I'm like, I want to roll, but no one's rolling with me. I'm like I want to roll with some guys, because they had this big open mat going on, and I came over to this guy that looked at me like, hey, what's going on, man? And then he like pops up and goes, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, you know, he's like, would you like to roll? I'm like, well, why didn't you just ask in the first place? He said, well, we're not allowed to ask black belts. We're not allowed to talk to them unless they talk to us. I'm like, I'm not the fucking like emperor of Japan, man. Like, you can talk to me all you want to. Like, it's okay.
Not allowed
like,
to talk. Now, I've heard people say that it's disrespectful to ask a higher rank to roll. I'm not one of those people. I'll ask anybody to roll because I want to roll. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. The only people who would take it disrespectful are people who are douchebags. You know, like, it's not disrespectful to want to train and learn from somebody who you know is going to have more experience than you. You know,
absolutely. That's the whole reason I used to roll with the higher belts, because I knew they were going to kick my butt and I wanted to feel it, you know? And so it wasn't like I was trying to beat them. It's like, I wanted to learn from you guys. I wanted to feel what it was like to go with someone better. And so, you know, I think that obviously anybody always has the right to decline a role, But I don't see any problem with saying, hey, there's a blue belt that wants to roll with a black belt. He wants to fill that skill. Let's do it, man.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite training sessions are the ones where I get crushed. I'm weird like that. Like, I love to roll with somebody and just get demolished. I'm not going to let you do it, but when it happens, I feel I learn so much more because I can ask so many more questions, or I can look at it and analyze a little better and go, man, I made a mistake here. This is a giant hole in my game I need to fix. Now, I'm one of those people that's glutton for punishment too, because what I'll do is, like, if I'm rolling with somebody who beats me with something, I try to recreate the situation, you know? Oh.
Right. So, sorry, I had to pull off. I had to get the little cord to plug it up.
No, it's all good. You know, but if I'm rolling with somebody and they armbar me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, I try to, like, recreate that exact same pathway. Like, I'm like, all right, I go to pat. Oh man, I got stuck in guard. Okay, I reached up, I went to go pass, and then he armbars me. What I'll do usually is I'll do the exact same thing just to see where my mistake was. Like, okay,
sure.
Well, now I can defend against the armbar. I go, okay, my pass was the mistake. Or I go, okay, well, the opening the guard, that was my mistake. Or, you know, like, I try to just go through those because there's so many things that could have been done better that I try to recreate. And I might get armbarred like 5 or 6 times in a row. Yeah. Like, but at least I go, okay, well, this is a better way, or this is a better option through each one of the steps in that scenario.
Well, right. And also going back to what you were talking about earlier, when you leave the gym, this is something that people maybe don't really find value in as much. But it's very important, almost a debriefing, whether if you have a friend, me and my friend, when I first started training, we used to do this together. We would come in and train, we would drive to the gym together, and we would leave together. And when we would leave, we would talk about our experience. Man, I got caught in this, you got caught in this, or whatever. And you can kind of think about those scenarios over and over again in your head, even if you're just doing it by yourself, and sort of replay the situations and try to find the issues. And also, if you know what's happening and you can recreate it like that, you can bring it to your coach. You can bring it to a higher belt. You can say, hey, listen, you know, at the end of class or whatever, what were you doing? How, like, can we put me in that position again? How can I get out of this, that kind of thing? And so you can learn from those situations, like you said, by putting yourself more and more there, because, you know, the more you're there, the more time you'll have to figure things out and, you know, become comfortable with the situation.
Now, we're kind of getting towards the end here. I appreciate your time, like all your time. I just, you know, before we head out,
yeah,
I just want you to take the opportunity to kind of like tell people a little bit more about the stuff that you do on social media specifically, because we talked to everything about the gym today, but you know, you have a very great YouTube channel. Your Instagram is very interesting. You have these I don't know what I would call them. They're like words of wisdom, I guess you could say, where it's like you standing in like your gym area, or green screen. I think it's green screen, but you standing.
It's not a green screen. It's complete.
It's not.
No. Hey, I did a video on that because everybody says green screen, but if you look in the back, there's always stuff moving around, and I think it's the way that the light comes down and reflects. Because I did a video, like, because that was one of the random questions I got, and I started, like, you know, I mean, it's not a green screen, and I started to like move myself around the back. No, it's 100% like,
it's
I don't
the
like
angle too. It looks
I don't
like
green screens.
Okay, well, good, because I don't know how to use them. So, but you know, like, if you could just tell people a little bit about what they can find on your page, where they can find you, more information about you, and you also have a podcast too, right?
Yeah, we just started one. We have we typically do them a live episode. Today we're doing an interview with the guest, so it won't be live like it is normally. But yes, we just started a podcast. So basically, if anybody's interested in anything that I have going on, you can put in Jujitsu. Basically, just put that in YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can put it on iTunes or whatever you listen to podcasts on. I have a Jujitsu podcast, but you know, basically, I share things that are helpful to me. So obviously, I do techniques and I do those sorts of things that people ask questions about, and I also try to share ideas and perspectives that I find useful. and when people ask me a question, I find that a lot of times, you know, we all have these. We have the technique questions, but then we have a lot of like random questions that aren't really necessarily technique, but they have everything to do with the mindset or just your approach or your perspective or the ideas that are coming in. And so a lot of times I just try to share ideas and things like that that are useful to me or helpful to me, and hopefully that they're useful to someone else. And so if anybody wants to find that stuff, you know, I'm not hardcore with the plugs. Just look up Jiu-Jitsu, you'll find me. It's pretty easy, and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll be sharing this on our YouTube page, so that people can see the interview and stuff if they didn't get a chance to watch it now. I love your stuff. Keep it coming. I'll follow
you as well, man.
Yeah,
I like your stuff too, because you know it's obviously there's a comedic nature to it, but there is some seriousness to it where you're saying, look, guys, like, you know, just like you posted the video the other day with the guy with like the pad, and they're like their elbow in the pad. I mean,
that guy was
like,
on. He hopped on and defended it.
Oh my God! But that guy, like those kids in that garage somehow believe that dude, you know, and it's sad because, you know, they're probably young kids that don't know any better, and so, you know, there's a comedic nature to it, but it is serious in the martial arts community because there are a lot of people out there that do this stuff, and if there's no like, and there's no regulatory body to go after them, so it takes guys like you and guys like, you know, jiu-jitsu practitioners and whoever else is doing it, where they go out and they call these dudes out and they make fun of them and they make it known to the public. So at least you have something so that if someone searches up someone's name, there's an asterisk there saying, okay, hey, listen, like he says this, but there's this whole slew of other people that have proven themselves that say this. Maybe he's not legit. So
yeah, I really appreciate that. To end, I got 30 seconds before it kicks me off. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Patreon. Feel free if you want to represent the studio, you can. You pick up a shirt. Thank you to my sponsors, dude. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to go on some of the trips I go on. So thank you to Ground Shark Coffee and to Jit Soap, and we will catch you guys the next time. Thank you so much for being on, brother. I appreciate it.
Take care, brother.